Yep. Good evening.
Evening.
Present. I will make an early apology. I have to be off just before 7 o'clock if we happen to go long. So I'll apologize in advance if that comes up.
Sure, no problems.
Steve, I was expecting you might take this call from the road.
No, the road is my office here where I'm sitting. So
Yeah, you're back, huh?
one of these days it might be back on a plane somewhere. This I have to do an investor call with Singapore. So ordinarily I would have been there. So I'll be in Singapore in an hour.
I was speaking more of your camping trip Colleen mentioned.
Yeah. So no, we did that last week and got back. Everything went well. Thank you.
Good. Hello, Officer Wade.
So should we give it a couple of minutes more? I see Gary has joined. Do we know if Carol or Joe are going to join?
Carol said she would join. I haven't heard anything if Mr. Davis was or was not going to join.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Mike, are we going to do the pledge?
You're the chair. You're the chair.
No, typically, would you advise? I mean, or do we? Because we'll need to find the flag and.
I think in the Zoom world we have not been doing the pledge.
Right, that's what I was looking for in terms of a recommendation. Thank you. So if nobody has an objection, we could, not do the pledge.
No objection.
I have no objection.
Sorry for the double negatives there, but. So if it's been a couple of minutes, in the interest of time and considering people do want to kind of wind up early like Steve does, shall we get started? So the first agenda item here is the public comment. Do we have any member of the public here who would like to comment on the agenda items here, of course? I don't see any notification. I see a chat. Thank you, Robert. So yes, we do need to do a roll call. I'm sorry, I was just reading the participant list here and I decided that, oh yeah, that was good enough. But in terms of the roll call, let me get that started. So do we have Carol? I guess we do not. Joe Davis, we do not. Sriram present. Steve?
Present.
Tom Owen?
Present.
And Mike Lampras?
I'm here.
And Chief McCulley?
Commander Wade will be here in place of Chief McCulley.
Okay, and Sergeant Kotler?
Here.
And Robert Ubadia?
Here.
So shall we move on to public comment? Is there any member of the public that's here that would like to comment? I guess not. And with that, we move on to the regular agenda items, and there are none. And so we move on to the next, which is the approval of the minutes for the July 14th minutes. Do we have anyone to
I'll happily approve them. I was present, so I can approve them. So, Steve, Mella.
Anybody to second it?
Sure. I'll second it.
All right, thank you. So that's the meetings, the minutes of the meeting are approved. And in terms of the old business, we have the townwide local traffic flow long-range planning solution study. Robert?
Oh, thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I'm just going to provide a brief overview of some recent activities that we've had related to the study. As we brought forth to you last time, the town was planning to hold, and we did hold, 2 virtual workshops to gather resident input with regards to traffic, transportation, safety, and mobility issues on our streets. We had approximately 14 people attend each meeting, and I think we had a couple of the committee members attend them as well. And so we do appreciate the public coming out that night. We provided an overview to the council at their last meeting with regards to the meetings, and just to hit a couple of highlights. We had a couple of polling questions during the meetings in which we asked folks where they heard about the outreach effort. And with regards to the respondents, about 50% at each meeting indicated that they heard by mailer. And then the next area where they heard from it was via town news flashes and online outreach news flashes and emails that they subscribe to via the town's system. And with regards to the areas of most concern for those that participated in the surveys were related to speeding, cut through traffic, and congestion. The purpose of the meeting was solely to gather input and to educate folks as to the ways that they could provide it. They were certainly welcome to do so at the breakout sessions connected to the meetings where we talked about the individual neighborhoods. But we directed them also to our project website, which is www.athertontrafficmanagement.com, in which we have that online survey and the interactive mapping tool that we went over at the previous meeting. And so as of the report that we provided to council, we had almost 400 unique visitors to the website. 400 visitors to the website, 260 of which were unique. And 162 of those folks completed the online survey. 41 respondents used the interactive mapping tool with about 75 comments provided online. And so at that meeting, the council approved the extension of the outreach period. So the outreach period has been extended by 1 month to the end of September. We're currently working on another mailer that should be hopefully going out this week to advise folks. There's been a news flash that was put out through the Atherton Online last week at the end of the week, advising folks that are subscribing to the service that the comment period has been extended. Our next steps after we conclude the outreach effort is to compile the data, the comments, the input that we receive, to put that into context. We'll be sharing that with the committee and the council, and then moving forward to kind of taking a look at what those are and looking at some potential solutions before we do another public outreach effort to educate folks as to what the issues are that we've received, get input from them as to where focus should be put to, whether their feelings are that we should keep folks on certain routes, or if cut through is a major concern, and educating them as to the pluses and minuses of different traffic calming measures that could be considered. And so then we would be soliciting input from them before we take our next steps in terms of refining that input and bringing it forward to the committee and the council. So curious as to input from those committee members that attended the meeting as to what they thought. And so we could take that information and use it moving forward as we hold our next round of meetings. But hopefully as we move forward, we'll be able to do that in person as opposed to virtually.
Hey, Robert, you mentioned taking it to the committee and to the council. Can you just explain how the role of the committee, how you see the committee getting involved?
Just input. It's predominantly to share the information and receive input. It's not, we're not going to be moving towards solutions as of yet, but because the committee has been involved in the process, we do want to share the information.
Robert, so I was one of those that attended the first of the two sessions, and actually my wife did as well on a separate computer in here. So I think the process was good. There was a fair bit of discussion. What I found, and it perhaps was unique to mine, when you went to the breakout rooms to discuss more specific things, the breakout room that I sat on was completely dominated by one individual, from the public. And they wanted to essentially insist that everybody followed their particular approach for how to solve and affect the solution, which personally I don't agree with, and I made it clear I didn't. But nevertheless, I don't know if that was the same case in other breakout rooms consistently across. If it was, we have the potential for fairly skewed data, at least from the public standpoint. So.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it. I know that the couple of breakout rooms that I attended weren't that way. They were more geared to getting input on issues as opposed to talking solutions.
Thank you for that input, Robert. And question for you is, will the committee get to see any of the proposed solutions and get a chance to comment or debate on the proposed solutions before the public does, or is it supposed to be that all of us get access to the proposed solutions together?
Well, I think what we are looking at is really reaching out to the public to talk about what the issues are, where priorities in terms of where our residents feel priorities are, so that we can take that information and bring it back. And I think that it's important that the decision-making process kind of be after we gather some of that input.
So is there a typical process? I mean, I'm sure you and other town councils must have encountered this. This is to Steve's point, is that if there is a specific member of the citizenship or the public that kind of dominates and tries to channel the solution that they desire, are there any kind of typical processes or tools that you have to handle these kind of situations?
Well, I think that we can, depending on the format of the meeting, the concern that we could theoretically enact a process such as is done during the council meetings and the committee meetings, wherein a member is invited, a member of the public is invited to speak, and they have a limited amount of time to do so in a particular order. But what we wanted to accomplish in the last meeting was more what you would gather in an actual breakout room, so that we can have some unfiltered comments from the residents in terms of where and what their concerns were. And so it wasn't as structured as these meetings are. And as we move forward, I guess we'll be considering how we want to manage that. But I do appreciate the feedback.
Personally, I'm okay with that format. I think that the breakout rooms are a little more casual than a city council meeting where you could find someone that dominates. I think in those situations that Mr. Meller found, that's up to the person who's controlling that room to try to, manage that person and move away and get the rest of the input. I did not see anything quite like that in the rooms I was in, but I think what you find in those situations, and it's a problem we've had with ADAPT and a problem we've had with certain in any sort of community outreach in the town of Atherton, is unique in that it's hard to get a broad cross section of folks to respond to these types of inquiries. 25 people responded on one, 27 on the other, half of which of those folks got word through mailers or postcards. So basically 13 people times 2, so 26 people saw a postcard in all of the town. So one thing I would want to think about is how do we broaden the reach with the goal and intent of getting feedback, sort of two goals. One is to make sure that folks have an opportunity, and two, the reason you want them to have an opportunity is to give their feedback and input on the changes that, the problems that affect the town and the changes that they might want to see affected. So I think that's a sort of another issue of like, how do we get that outreach, and whether it's postcards or the almanac or what was the other one?
Next door.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity, although that's not listed here. So how did you hear about us? Postcards, friends and family, Atherton News, Flash, almanac, other, 15% in other on the first one. Anyway, I don't have a silver bullet to sort of, this is how we've done it at CERT or elsewhere, but we should probably think about other opportunities to add to the mix to get the word out that input is welcome.
Well, again, we're going to be reaching out again through the means and methods that we have, but we certainly do appreciate if the committee members and others that have heard about it can actually share it with their friends and neighbors with regards to the efforts that we're doing. And so, Tom, if through ADAPT or other things you can get the message out, we certainly want to get that message out as broadly as we can. And
I'll bring it up with the
if,
ADAPT folks and see if we can't piggyback on some of whatever they're doing.
Yeah, so the outreach period has been extended through the end of this month. The videos from the previous meetings are online, both the main sessions as well as the breakout rooms. And so they're invited to, watch the videos of the meetings, or just go directly to the surveys and the interactive map to put the information online, so that we can gather it. My contact information is there as well, so if anybody has any questions or things that they need some help with, they can certainly reach out to me as well.
All right.
So, Robert, just to make sure I understand the committee's role in this stuff, before any specific action is taken, meaning a speed hump or a no right turn or anything like that, that will come, that is intended to come before this committee, correct?
That's the process that we have. I think that what we will be doing is before we make any recommendations to council with regards to any sort of action such as that, we would be coming to the committee.
And an issue that came up at a couple of the meetings I was at was the lack of sidewalks. Is that something that comes to this committee or bike ped, or where does that go?
It might start at the bike ped and then come through here. The council, the current policies that we have in place limit actual sidewalk, but we do have some identified walkways that are desired in the bike and ped master plan. And so as those things are funded through the capital program or through grant applications, because we currently don't have funds on our own to put those things in.
Right. Well, the reason I bring it up is I heard people speak very specifically about a couple of places they thought it was dangerous to walk. that are not on our bike and ped master plan.
Mhm.
And so
And
how will
so-
that come up? Because that should
So-
come up in some way.
So what we are going to be doing is compiling all of the data that we got or that we are getting through the online portals. We've gotten some emails and I've gotten a couple of separate phone calls. And so we're logging all of that information. We'll be compiling it. And as that's compiled, we'll share that information as to where people are reflecting issues and concerns in different areas throughout the town.
Yeah, and I apologize for sticking on the sidewalk thing for a minute, but that actually requires a change in, I'm not sure which plans the town has got. Basically, the town's vision of itself is that we don't have sidewalks. So if there was a decision that people wanted more sidewalks, for example, how, you know, Steve's saying no, but there are people talking about that. They wanted sidewalks for safety
Mhm.
purposes. That would go, you think, more to bike ped than here.
I'm going to say that usually a lot of the things that go through bike ped come to this committee
So it
as
might be
well.
both. Okay.
But I'm going to say that, we have some things that are in our Muni code with regards to concrete sidewalks. And so though we may not be doing concrete sidewalks, we could certainly do walkways in different areas.
No, I hear you. And I want to resolve the issue here. I was just struck by how many people went right to sidewalks. And
Well,
I
I'm going to
think
say
we
that
as a
right
community-
now, with everybody being home, everybody's going
but
out on
if I
walks,
could, Robert, I'm sorry,
and
just to finish my point.
that's what's brought it up.
Yeah, but to finish my point, though, I think that I do think that we as a town may want to reconsider our policies, because that's what I heard, and at least have that conversation. There are people who felt strongly it wasn't safe to walk on some of these streets.
Okay.
We could also improve safety, which would be speed and cut through.
And the next thing you're going to get, once you put sidewalks in, it's a never-ending deep hole. Then people are going to say, well, I can't see, so you need to put street lights in. I think it's a bad move to go down that direction, to the point you just made. There's a lot more people on the streets at all various times. If you eliminated the cut-through traffic, the streets are dramatically safer. So that's actually, you'll need to look at the cause of what's actually creating the issue for people versus Band-Aid patch it. And in my opinion, my strong opinion, a sidewalk is a Band-Aid patch. So
I tend to agree with Steve, and besides, my argument would also be that it's going to be tough to raise the funding for it.
So I said, at this point, we're not talking solutions. We're gathering input, and we're not predisposing one solution over another. It's going to be an effort to compile the data, and we will then start the conversation as to where the priorities are and which, what some of those solutions might be, with, those pluses and minuses. And that's a conversation to be had in the future. So, from our perspective, we're not predisposing that, whether sidewalks are the right thing to do or not in those particular areas. And we're going to wait and see how many people are pointing at what their concerns are in the various neighborhoods. And so it may be that, that meeting may have had a few folks that mentioned that, and they may end up being the only ones that did. So,
Thank you, Robert. Anybody has any other comment or input on this specific agenda item?
okay. Well, you may want to open it up to public comment if that's the extent of comments from the committee.
Okay, as per the agenda item, we were supposed to move on next to these staff reports, but I'll take Robert's advice and open it up to public comments. Anybody from the public that would like to comment?
Do we know if anyone from the public is online? Or
I guess we should consider Gary as part of the public.
Yeah. So if a member of the public is interested in raising their hand is usually the way that we find that out. I see Gary's unmuted himself.
I'm
Gary's
here,
not California.
but I don't want to interfere with anything. I just happen to have some free time.
Okay.
So carry on. Thanks.
We hear you, Gary. Thank you. So with that, we move on to the next agenda item of the staff reports. Sergeant Cockler.
So everybody was provided the July and August staff reports. Does anybody have any questions on them?
No, I'm good. I mean, are there any highlights that you would like to point out too?
No, I think that, you know, for 4 collisions in July and 3 collisions in August, I think with everything going on right now with coronavirus, school's not in session, you know, people not working like they were before, I think is about right. We did have 4 arrests for driving under the influence in August, which is up 2 from July. And then we're also started going out and doing a lot more officer initiated traffic contacts. So, you know, in July, you can see we had 233 total violations, whereas in August, we had 445. So almost double in August what we had in July. But I don't see anything out of the ordinary with either one of these reports or any of the information contained in them for either month.
Got it.
If I could, Sergeant or Commander, without schools in the morning, that must free up a lot of resources, right? Because now we spend a lot of time dealing with school traffic in the mornings and afternoons. Has there been any practical impact to the schools being shut down? Is that helping us apply resources somewhere else, or what's going on with that?
So if no one has any comments on that, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the future agenda items. Does anyone have any proposal, any proposed subject to speak about next time? And since we already had opened it up for public comments, so I guess we can move on to the next meeting date, which is November 10th. Chances are I may not be able to join it in case I'm out of town. But I'll get to know in about a month's time. Any comments from anyone? Shall we move on to the next, which is the adjournment?
Just short comment. Will it be the same Zoom information, or will it be a different login, et cetera, each time?
Jennifer?
It would be new Zoom information for the next meeting. It changes for each meeting.
Okay, I'll pay even closer attention.
Thank you, Jennifer.
My pleasure.
And with that, we've reached the adjournment. I'd like to adjourn. And anybody to propose? Tom?
Suppose we adjourn then. So.
All right. Anybody second?
I will second the adjournment.
And the meeting stands adjourned. Good night. Good night, Jennifer and gentlemen.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Good night all. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.